your men can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold. But here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
Cheers, brother. So, I love doing this with you. This is a little bit different, sitting outside today on the back porch, like
beautiful,
doing a beer, a beautiful day. Something that has crept up in conversation between you and I a lot is this firefighter IQ. I think a lot of people are starting to ask a lot of questions about it because it's a different. You're putting a title to, I think, something that we all know is important and need to know how to do, but it's going a little bit deeper. And I'll give you the perfect conversation, right? Starter is like when we talk about forcing that door. The door is the obstacle, it's not the mission, right? Like, we got to get across that threshold, and we're not teaching that in the academies today. And I've had a lot of people, like, create conversation around that and say, like, never thought of it that way. I never even thought of it that way until I really met you, and we talked for the past several years and starting to understand, like, where you come from with it. It's a different way of thinking that I don't think we're teaching from the get. It's almost like it's like sets and reps, right? That's set and rep, set and rep, set and rep. I need to force a door 50 times this weekend at this conference because then it's going to become muscle memory and then I can get inside. But then what's inside?
Yeah. That's why I never liked the word rep for that very reason, because I feel like it's kind of set a lot of guys up for failure, especially these motivated guys that are into the job, learning the job, and then they get this whole gaps. What is it? The
gap set, spike, force, something.
Shock.
I don't even know.
That's
shock.
Shock, gap set, force, right? And that's good, but it's kind of program a firefighter robot mentality with no IQ. So the word reps is very uneducated. Reps are important, but I think it's an uneducated way of looking at the job. It's as simple as, like, in the basketball world, bounce pass, chest pass, bounce pass, chest pass. Those are reps to a point, but really it's just a maneuver to get the ball into position to score the basket.
But you got to know when to chest pass and when to bounce pass.
Exactly. And that comes from going to fires, talking about fires.
Yeah.
Acting like you've been there before, we hear this.
I love that.
There's so much.
Talk about that.
But there's so much reality to it that if you envision the bounce pass, the chest pass, if you envision winning, making the free throw, scoring a touchdown, hitting a home run, you have to think about these things every day that you are playing sports. When you go to the firehouse, you have to envision every moment of your tour. You go out that door, you should be thinking about going to a fire, practicing, driving into work, looking at buildings, practicing, going to pick up groceries, looking at buildings differently. And that's something when I get the young probies, when I was teaching probie school, I'm like, you need to start thinking like a firefighter. I don't care what you did yesterday, but by the end of today, you will look at this building differently. And when you go home, you will look at buildings differently. It's almost like we're ruined as firefighters. We can't go anywhere without picturing a building on fire. And if you're not doing that, you're not truly into the game.
That's what I was just going to say to you, right? It's like I do that everywhere I go. Yeah. I look at things and I'm like, oh man, okay. I can see like the path of fire travel if if it were to make, get out this window, like you could watch where, like all of that. I think that also then goes to like, what do you, and I would challenge like guys that listen to this, like when you're watching fire videos, fire porn on Instagram and YouTube and all that, because we all do, right? We all pick up a video here or there and look at it. If you're not thinking to yourself, what would you do? How would you act? Where would you go? What do you see that they don't see? Like if you don't analyze that and use it like, and you've talked about this as like your film. Like when we played high level sports, you watched film. You watched film on your enemy, on the competing team, right? Why wouldn't we do that when we're able now more than ever to view operations on the fire ground through technology today, right?
And I think it's almost getting buried because there's so much information that we're not looking at it the way we should be. We're so quick to swipe like. We're not really reading the content, which not all content's worth reading. And that video or that picture draws you in originally or initially, but take the time not just to swipe it, to look at and watch the video 2-3 times. I posted one today about gaining position on a fire, that the portable ground ladder is just a bridge to gaining position, and that we lose sight of what that ladder really is, the purpose of it, because of how the fire service has kind of just made it the task rather than the bridge to gain position.
Throwing ladders.
Yes. Reps, the word reps, throwing ladders, right? Get those reps in. But we're not talking beyond the rep.
There's value in the rep, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's value in the bounce pass. There's value in playing catch in the backyard as a kid with your father. Like, all those, there's value in that, but that's not the game.
And I say that because I want to make sure that people understand where you're coming from with this, right? It's like the rep is important. Sets and reps, important.
Yeah.
Right?
Doesn't end there, though.
That's it, right?
The discussion, everyone doesn't want to talk about, like, people would rather do hands-on than lecture. I kind of tend to do the other way. Like, I think there's more value in a good lecture that could teach you the IQ of the game. Then you go back to your firehouse and you practice the reps of that IQ, of understanding why we're throwing this ground ladder. It makes more sense to do it, rather than learning how to throw it and then figure out what comes next.
We value the hands-on much more than we do a lecture. However, I think a lot of that has to do with there's some really boring shit out there in the lecture circuit.
Yes. And an epidemic we're seeing is that a lot of the lectures aren't taught from experience. They're taught from reading a book, going on stage, and presenting that book in a different format, the same book that everyone in that room has already read. So it's just like a constant circle of boringness.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I don't think it challenges people, right? Like, I've sat through so many lectures at different conferences and different places, training events, and I don't ever feel there's a few that stand out that were dynamic and challenged you in your seat in the auditorium to say, like, that's something different. I've never heard it put that way before. I that resonates with me, and it's how the message is delivered and then where it's coming from. It's pretty quick to realize who's not in the trenches of what they teach. You know what I'm saying? Like, the fire service is really weird, right? We have a lot of people out there that present information. When you look at, and even recently, there's been some Instagram posts, right? Because that's a level of teaching, right? Instagram. If you take responsibility on your page to put content out there, you're educating, whether you understand that or not. You're sharing information, whether it's a video, a picture, or written word. You're sharing information. You better make sure that represents what you believe to be right about the job.
I think that social media is the highest form of firefighting education right now. Because the guys that don't necessarily want to kill a day to go to a conference or do it hands-on because they're coaching lacrosse, they can sit back at night and scroll and read a couple posts that are good. Highest level of education in the fire service, right there. With that, we have to pick and choose what we're reading. But like I said, the palm of your hand is a senior man. It's also the palm of your hand is any kind of training you want. You just have to look for it. Unfortunately, we've been overwhelmed with a lot of misleading down the road of experience through hiding through platforms. And we talked about it last episode a little bit, but like, don't want to beat that with the bat, but there's a lot of truth to that. There's always been truth to that, but a lot of the good content's getting buried by other content that's not necessarily dialed into experience.
You said something before that I think parlays right into this, just to back up a minute. You talked about being able to digest content like we do, right? Videos and so on, and we can learn from them. And where I want to go with that is that now we have the ability to do that. And it allows for people to learn even if they don't have the opportunity to do it themselves, right? Like when we have conversation with people, I messaged John Norman this morning, Chief Norman, his post this morning was awesome. It was he bumped into a guy and he reminisced about years ago about this 10-alarm fire and stuff, and he shared that experience. And I don't know if you saw the post this morning, but I sent him a message. I said, Chief, thank you for sharing that. It was the best read of the morning. I said, I felt like I was right there with you, the way you were describing it and talking about it. And it makes me think, like, you can still get into the game even if you're not there, if you allow yourself to learn like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because you're not there doesn't mean that you can't get value from having conversation with people or watching a video. You can train and teach yourself things even if you haven't done it. The experience is important. You do have to get hands-on and eventually do it to know you can do it. But you can learn up front, which I love.
Yeah, and I think the value in that comes from not necessarily the positive experiences, the negative experiences, the mistakes that the instructor or the teacher or the lecturer has made over the years, bringing the humility of, this is what I did wrong, this is what I learned, this is how you should go about your career, your path, or if you're ever in this situation, how you should react. I think that's important, and I think that's where we're getting drowned out with a lot of boring lectures, where guys say, you know what, I listened to this guy do a lecture, or I read this book on, who knows, wind-driven fires, on high-rise operations, where these guys that are teaching these things have never been to wind-driven fire, have one high-rise in their response area. I'm not pointing fingers, but let's be realistic. Like, I can make a class about anything I wanted, but if you stay in your lane, that's where the value is.
Yeah, and go deep.
Yeah, like you like to say, the broad stroke. So when you broad stroke fire training, you don't get authenticity, you don't find humility, and there's no experience.
The saying I heard the other day, which I even love more than my broad stroke, is deeper, not wider.
I like that.
Right? Like, you know, a pond can be, we were just talking about the pond in my backyard here, right, before we started recording. And I said, "You're any fish in there?" And I'm like, it's only like 2 or 3 feet deep, some sunnies, some catfish and stuff, but nothing great. I'd love to put some bass in there and so on, right? But the issue is it's wide, it's not deep. I think when you can go deep, that's where the value is. Like, anybody can broad stroke anything in the fire service. Anybody can go wide on any topic, right? If you've been a fireman for a few years, you can talk about anything you want, right? You have some experience, I can talk about anything. But how deep can you go with it? Because the value comes from the depth. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, and the depth, a lot of times, is explored, or it comes to life after the class. At lunch, on the break, in the bar afterwards, catching up at the social. That's where we get to see, really, well, this guy said this. Let me really go see what he's saying or thinking. Take it 3 steps further, and then you can see the value in what you were just taught in the classroom session. Why it's so important that I do know there's instructors that will teach their lecture and then go back to their room and disappear. I think it's a horrible way of teaching, because the value is afterwards.
Yeah.
Connecting, making that it's the fire service. It's all about connecting, the brotherhood, the family, everything everyone's preaching. Well, if you're going to be on stage talking about something, you have to give them the step after the class, which is so important, and we're losing that. I don't know if we're losing it, but some people aren't doing it.
Well, you got to make yourself available to the people that you're working with and talking to. Yeah. It's like the other day you talked about, the whole love thing. Trust comes from a place of love, right? And then you made a comment in that video, which I absolutely loved, and you said, get out of your office, spend time with your people. Well, you got to do the same thing. If you're willing to put yourself out there to teach and train, you need to put yourself out there to teach and train even after you come off the stage.
Yeah.
You need to go all in on the people. They're there starving for a message. They're starving for information. You're providing it to them. Be there for the aftermath of it. That's the best part.
Yeah. I worked last night. I'm up in the office doing some things. I know the Knicks are getting crushed. Not happy. No one in the kitchen's happy.
Right.
So I get what I have to get done. A couple phone calls made. Walk downstairs. Hang out. A couple runs. Now it's midnight. We're still in the kitchen. Now it's 12:30. Still in the kitchen. Now it's 1 o'clock. Still in the kitchen. We're just telling stories and laughing and joking. That's the connection of that love I was talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
Now the tones go off for a fire. Well, we were just interacting in the kitchen at 1 a.m. because we wanted to be there.
Right.
During the day, you kind of have to be together. When you get past the midnight hour, Those are the guys that want to be together. Very different type of guys.
Yeah.
At 12, the guys go to bed, they disappear, they hang back. At 12:01 is you get the guys that want to learn, that want to hang out, that want to be part of the brotherhood. Different type of guys, different
You said
caliber.
they were banging on the blue door at 1:30 in the morning not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, very cool, you know? But that's an environment that I think most people are starving for. Doesn't exist everywhere.
And I'm super, super lucky, and I know that. Not everyone has the opportunity, the ability to work in places with such tremendous guys, and I understand that, but it goes both ways. You can be the firefighter to create that environment.
Yeah.
The problem is, we get the messages on social media. Well, this guy's saying this about me, this saying that. They don't want that environment. They're fighting the young guys trying to become motivated. I think it's always been that way. I don't think it's anything new. I think that it's just a natural progression of the fire service. As the old guys go out, most of them are kind of disgruntled and angry, like pretty much what started your whole mission here. And the new guys are coming in. They had different ideas, different thoughts. We got to bridge the gap, and I don't think that fighting it necessarily is going to help anything in the fire service. You have to embrace it, because when you stop embracing what they're trying to do or what they're trying to change, and you tell them no, then they won't do anything.
Yeah.
You got to let your people work.
I agree with you. That's a huge message of mine that I share all the time. You got to say yes. You got to empower your people. Let them, and not only that, but recognizing too. I did an interview the other day, and it was a great conversation. It was a chief that's been retired for many years, and he recognizes the need that eventually I mean soon, he's going to start passing that torch on for allowing that next generation to start teaching and start taking over his message that he's been teaching for so long.
Yeah.
And for him to recognize that, I think that's what's really important, is recognizing that there is the next generation, the next class, and it always has to progress that way. We're never going to go backwards. We're always moving forwards, whether you like it or not, whether it's the same fire service that or if it's different, it's always going to change.
Yeah.
It's always going to change. I want to ask you this. I did an interview the other night with Tim Nagin, who we've worked with down in Alabama, at the Alabama Hot. Unbelievable, man. Come to find out, he's one of 3 most senior firemen on the job. 3 guys from him and 2 other guys. 2000, they went through the academy, so going on their 24th year, they're still backstep firemen.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and he's very proud of that. And he's very proud of, and he takes that job very, very seriously.
I mean, just from teaching with him, that level of commitment it's pretty obvious.
So that's where I want to go with this conversation, because I looked at his work ethic.
Yeah.
When we were at training, and not only did he not stop 1 second, I said to him, the one thing that really I recognized in him was his knowing where to fit in, when to fit in, and he was 5 steps ahead, so he was already there when he needed to get in. That, my friend, is impressive. Not everybody has that skill. And I wonder how much of it can be taught. The guy's got an incredible work ethic. Not only does he work hard, but he's also conscious of everything around him. Right? So it's like multitasking, being able to take on different things at once, like watching what Mickey's doing while Jeremy's working over here and I'm doing my own thing, but I'm watching them because I know they're going to need me to hop in, at some point, right? It's that.
So a great example of Tim's commitment and his ability to know where to fit in was in Alabama. We're doing the CAN Confidence. It's myself and Bob Pressler, and we're switching off and on. I take one group, Bob talks. Bob goes in, I talk, and we're switching the entire day. It's great evolution, great class. But it got to a point where there was a lapse where we needed him to fill in and not just be the helper. He was a stoker, right? Resetting the dummy, and he was a workhorse. But then there was a moment where he had to fit in and take a group in, and I became the helper because I came a little late and I crawled in, and I'm listening to him, this guy has it down. It's the entire script. It's not a script, but it becomes a script when you're doing those evolutions.
When you're doing it over and over.
Yeah, and he had it dialed in so good where I was like, they don't need me. And I went, and I remember telling Tim afterwards at dinner, I said, man, you really, really impressed me. Not only your work ethic, but your knowledge. He really is a smart guy, but he knows how to dial it back, to be a backstep guy and know where to fit in, right? And he's not the one to be vocal about it. he lets his tools do his talking. And that's the biggest thing I love. When you see a great firefighter, it's letting your tools do your talking. They don't have to say a word. You watch how they pull the ceiling, that's squared away. Watch how he forces the door, squared away. Listen to the transmissions, it's a good officer. You let your tools do your talking. You don't have to say anything. And Tim's a great example.
I love that. Before I go where I want to go with that conversation, let your tools do the talking. To a young firefighter today, how important is it for their performance to speak for who they are? Like, I know it's important, but like, it's easy to take. You talk a lot about trimming out windows, right? And like, there's a pride factor in trimming out windows. And it's like, if you're going to take glass, take it, clean the sill, right? Mm-hmm. So on. There's a pride factor that goes into that, but it really does translate and send a message to the others for the guy that did that task.
It starts with committee work in the firehouse, the volunteer world. It starts with work night. Who's doing what at work night? You taking the trash out, or are you just hanging back, talking, having a beer, doing your thing at work? Are you disappearing during committee work? Are you doing the easy task instead of jumping in, taking on, you know what? We got the basics done. Let's pull the rigs out. Let's do the apparatus floor. Those are the guys that let their tools do their talking, because when you get to a fire, they're the ones trimming the window. They're the ones pulling the ceilings and clearing the room, because they know the details. It's all about details. I always say devil's in the details, but that starts with committee work, how important that is. Starts with the meal prep, how important that is, understanding where to fit in. Tones go off, now we go to a fire. All the same guys that are all in at the firehouse, all the same guys that are trimming windows and pulling ceilings. And all the guys that are hanging back in the firehouse, the ones that go to bed at 11:30 and don't stay up to 1:30 and talk with the guys, they're the ones at the fires hanging back. It's almost like clockwork to watch. So you can kind of scan the room after midnight in a kitchen and know who you can rely on at a fire, who you can rely on in the firehouse daily chores. Left work this morning, the guys are out there painting lines. They're always doing something. I'm so fortunate where I am, truly. And there's really, really great firehouses all across the country that I think that have those key guys. My message to the young guys is watch those guys.
Yeah.
Because their tools are talking, not necessarily in the fire floor, but in the firehouse. They're talking very loudly. Don't dismiss it.
The details. Details take work.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I think about the details, and I think about where we are today in a lot of ways. I think it's almost definitely to a fault, but the fire service has become more about, yep, we got it done. High fives and ass slaps, and we're moving on to the next one, and not really focusing on what did we do well, what didn't we do well.
Yeah.
The details, right?
Details, how you pack a hose bed. Let your tools do your talking. You pack the hose bed right? Thank you.
Yeah.
Speaks volumes for pride. Speaks volumes for your character of the senior guy of that company, teaching the next guys, this bed's got to be packed properly. 3 a.m, if the bed's stripped and it's snowing out, all right, get it on the rig, get back to quarters. No one's going anywhere until this bed is perfect. It's not, let's wait till the morning. No. Pack that hose bed with pride. Character. Tools speaking very loudly from the top down. Go out the door, do it all over again. You know, it's the details. It always comes back to the details.
It does, and I think about that though, and I just think in my own world, it's like how often the details are overlooked or skipped, or we don't go deep. We're just going wide.
Okay. So the details, let your tools do your talking. That came from my father.
I love that. I met your father once. No, Wildwood maybe.
I think he
wasn't there.
He wasn't there that time. He came down. Yeah.
I need to meet this man.
But so he was a carpenter by trade, firefighter, but carpenter as well. And in the carpenter world, he always said, "Let your tools do your talking." Meaning, like, he's building custom kitchen cabinets. He never had any advertising. He had a small showroom, but it was never front and center. Some of these guys are front and center with their displays and this and that.
Big signs, right?
Yeah, let my tools do the talking. My tools will advertise enough for me, you know?
Right.
And he always carried that over for the fire ground as well. It's like, he always told me, he's like, Mickey, just relax. Just let your tools do your talking, that's enough said. Because you're a young fireman, you think you're better than you are. You're fired up, piss and vinegar, right? And he used to always reel me in. Say, yo, just let
You're
yourself
also
do your
though,
talking.
looking for validation, though. Like, that's what I'm finding a lot of today. We talk about it, the validation fire service. Everybody's looking for a pat on the back. And a lot of times, when you don't get that pat on the back, guys have certainly recognized your work, and it comes through in different ways of how they recognize you for being as good as you are. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't, I think what I'm trying to stress is, like, just because somebody didn't come up and give you an attaboy at that moment in time, you know, doesn't mean that it's not recognized. Like, I think, you know, it's like parenting, right? When I parent my kids, there's days that I highly praise them for things they do. And there's other things that are like, good job. But, like, it's expected. It's almost like
Expected, yeah.
I expect you to do that. Like, I'm not gonna thank you and praise you for, like, cleaning your room or straightening up or taking the garbage out. I might give you, like, hey, thanks for doing that. Like, hey, thanks. I'll say thank you when the initiative is there. But if I have to ask you or something like that, right? Like, it's just, I just want guys to understand that, like, I love the fact that you let your tools do the talking. Like, and a lot of time it's done quietly. And
Yeah.
it goes to Tim Nagan. Like, he's a quiet guy. Like, not in the, I don't want to say in the shadows, because he's not in the shadows, but he's circling. And he
He's
knows
like a shark.
when to step in
Yep.
and when to step out. And it's just, there's something about that. And I know a lot of it comes from experience and being in different positions and knowing how to navigate that landscape. But I also think some of it just you inherently have.
Yeah.
It's like work ethic. I think
Work ethic.
you have it or you don't. You and I were talking before. You said you heard, I wanted you to explain it because I want to go down this road. You listened to a podcast the other day, right? And they were talking about, you just hit me
Yeah.
up with this before, right? What was that?
Oh, it was saying how it's bad advice to tell someone to devote everything to something, where because not everyone's built for that. And that you could set someone up for failure, because not everyone is all in, like we like to talk about, on whatever particular task it is, from firefighting to building a business, building a coffee shop, building a restaurant, a bar, whatever it is. You have to live that for success. I believe that. I think you believe that.
Yeah.
I don't think the world believes that. But the true successful ones get it, because ultimately most of them win in the end. And the hate getting to that point is very, very real. But when you make it, all the hate, those guys will never look you in the eye. They'll look down when you walk in the room now, because there was so much hate building up to that. And that comes from jealousy of not having that within that internal drive
Right.
to be that guy.
Right.
In the firehouse, those are the guys that stand out, but the guys that aren't necessarily loved by that middle of the road crew, because like, this guy's making us look bad. In life, I feel that guys that are all in, whatever it is that they choose to do, are making the rest look bad. It may not be success overnight, because it never truly
Never
is. But 6, 10, 12, 15, 20 years, when you're truly successful, it all makes sense that you were the right guy for the right mission, doing the right thing.
That's where the resentment comes from, though.
Yes.
People resent the hard workers.
And the hard work's behind the scenes. That's what a lot of the haters, so many haters and everything. From the fire service, the firemen, I mean, we also preach brotherhood. Firemen hate firemen.
Firemen hate firemen.
More than anybody I've ever seen. It's crazy stuff, man.
Yep, I agree with you.
And I think as most of us are type A personalities, I'm a pretty reserved guy. On the fire ground, I'm very type A. In the firehouse, I'm kind of quiet to a point. But that type A personality, and you put them all living together,
Yes.
that's where a lot of that resentment and hate comes into play.
Sure.
But when you go to a fire, the standouts stand out, and the ones that don't, again, letting your tools do your talking.
But that work ethic, though, right? That going all in. It's, I think that's the difference, though, between high school, college, pro. Division 3 versus Division 1. Division 1 going
So
to
funny,
the
yeah.
pros, right? Like, it's really that conversation, because, like, anybody can... we have every type that can do this job. I didn't want to say anyone can do this job, but in fact, I guess they could. It's just at what level of the job do we want to hold them accountable for? Like, we can put anybody in a fire truck and roll out the door 15 times, 20 times, 25 times a day if in the busy departments. And if they're just a seat filler and they can do remedial tasks, I guess they can do the job. but it's certainly not what the public envisions of our job to be, let alone what we hold our own people to, right? I think that is the big thing. You had a comment the other day. It was one of my most favorite things you've said in a very long time. It was an Instagram quote, or it was an Instagram, one of your posts. And at the end of it said something to the effect of we should start going to the gyms and the sports and not subways and like
job fairs.
Yeah, what was that quote? I'm sorry, I'm butchering it right now, and I should. It
was.
Should have had.
I
that,
think
right?
it's time. I forget exactly, but it pretty much it breaks down that it's time we stop recruiting for the fire service at job fairs and subway stations, but rather let's start looking into gyms and playgrounds. So that's where you'll see the guys that understand teamwork, understand failure, understand where to fit in, understand sports IQ, which ultimately transfers over to firefighter IQ, because firefighting ultimately is a sport when you break it down to where to fit in on the fire ground.
I love it. Like, I absolutely love that, right? It's like, you know, we want a representative fire department. We want a department that represents the people that we serve, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's important to have people from every walk of life, every color, religion, race, sex, everything. I think it's important, but they still have to be able to do a job. And when we're just filling seats, I think that's a dangerous thing. We have to understand that, like, everybody in the fire service should be varsity.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't have, you know, we shouldn't have anything less than that. We don't want JV. We don't want freshmen. We don't want Division III. We don't want AA ball. I want the best of the best.
And when you're playing AA division, minor leagues, you're all striving
100%.
To become professionals.
That's it.
So you're at your highest peak performance, whatever that arena you're in.
Yes.
You're the guy.
Yes.
And across the board, it's not like one or two guys. You know, I read an article this morning, actually. It's from 2010. A guy says it to me. He's always sending me good stuff like this, and I didn't read it. I kind of dismissed it because I was just busy. I got back to it this morning. I was like, oh shit, that guy sent me that article. Let me go back and read it. And it was talking about how our job dynamics are changing, the demographics changing within the job, but how people with the professional sports, like New York Jets, right? It was about the New York Jets. And they're furious about Aaron Rodgers being hurt. They're furious about this guy not being good. They're furious about the draft. But they don't care about the equalization of minorities in the FDNY are affecting job standards. And it's a great article. It got buried. Of course it got buried because it was pretty blunt. But in the NFL, no one cares if you're Asian, if you're black, you're white. No one cares. They want the absolute best athlete.
That's
and
right.
as fans, if they don't have the best athlete, holy shit.
That's right.
Right? Especially in the New York, Philadelphia, Boston sports worlds. Media is very, very vicious here about the players. I don't understand how they're not vicious about the players in the fire service. Maybe they don't know, maybe it's blindsided, but maybe the public should wake up and see what's really going on out there and who they're really hiring and why they're hiring them. They're lowering standards on every level to meet a quota. Let's be realistic. The NFL is not meeting quotas. Major League Baseball is not meeting quotas. They're playing baseball. They're playing football. We are firefighting.
Yeah, I talk in my program about, I do the generational conversations, and I talk about greatest generation, silent generation, Generation X. I go all the way up, right? And we talk about the different age groups and the different socioeconomic issues that have shaped these, wars, all these different things in each generation that shape each generation so that you understand where they're coming from. And then at the end of it, I said, as different as we all are, the next slide says we're Generation Firefighter, meaning whether you're from World War II, the greatest generation, to Gen Alpha,
Yeah.
we all share one thing in common. It's Generation Firefighter. We're all Generation Firefighter. And so there are these shared core values, morals, ethics that we all stand by. And I said the fire doesn't discriminate or care about who we are. I don't care who I'm riding with in the back of that truck. I don't care who's sitting next to me or sitting across from me. I don't care what you look like, who you are. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you can do your job,
Yeah.
and you do it efficiently and professionally. That's it. That's the ultimate of what we need, the pinnacle of what firefighting is about. I don't care about anything else. It doesn't matter. And it even goes to the point where you could have a beef with a guy, and as soon as the gong goes off, that beef gets put aside because there's a job to do, right? Think about that, right? And so that speaks to what the true core values are of being a fireman.
It's not even you have a job to do. I could hate your guts. Those tones go off, we go to a fire, you fall through a floor, I'm not leaving.
That's correct. Yeah, 100%. Right. Exactly.
I'm going to die with you or for you.
That's right.
And we're going home.
Or
if we don't, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that hate is generated from the civilian side of most departments, not necessarily the brotherhood, which is real, I believe. I believe in it.
I do.
I buy into it. Not everyone does, and those are the ones that are all in. We can go back into the all-in thing, and I got a lot of heat for that. But I don't want to work with guys that are all in, that aren't going to say, you know what, I might not like you, and if you fall to the floor, I'm probably going to leave, because I'm not all in on this job. I got to get to the lacrosse game tonight. You know, those are the guys that I want to work with. And that's kind of where that segment, a couple episodes ago, we were talking about, and I got a lot of bad feedback, and I got a lot of really good feedback. So it was kind of nice to see both sides of it.
Sure.
And I kind of got to like realize who I align with and who I really don't ever want to work with. And it's not people I know. It's just people that reach out to me after that episode. Oh, that really resonated with me. I really liked it. Or you have your marks way off. You don't know what you're talking about. And it was cool to see both sides of it.
Sure.
I'm not saying they're wrong. They're just not my people.
Right.
These are my people.
We have different tribes, man.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just like we have different firehouses.
Yep. Different companies.
Different fire companies.
Yeah.
And some of the companies are A companies, and some are B, C, and D companies.
Yeah. And now the problem lies with that, where we're getting today, is where we're not holding certain people accountable within those A companies. They just want the collar brass and say, you know what, look where I work, or look where I'm from, more so, because they're there for a resume, so they move on to the next place. They get promoted, they go to that place. Oh, where'd you come from? I came from so-and-so. Wow, great place. That automatically reflects who you are. We talked about it last episode.
I think we brought up John Norman again in that conversation. And I said that he talked about, that if you have a covering officer or an officer comes to your company, his pedigree speaks volumes as the type of guy he is.
Yeah. And even as getting a detail who's a probie, which my old place, I was very, very proud of this. That if you're a probie at my old firehouse, and we have a detail going out to another company, as much as we trusted this guy, or any guy, because we trained them, he's our guy, we're not sending him anywhere because he's our probie. He's our responsibility.
Right.
Not that company down the streets. So a guy with 20 years would take the detail for him and keep him in the company, give him the irons for the night, send the senior guy to an engine down the road, because it speaks volumes for our company and our character, saying, you know what, this is our guy, he's our responsibility, not yours. Once you get that front piece on, you get the probie front piece off and you put the red or the black front piece on, all bets are off. You're representing what we've trained you to do. But we feel comfortable at this point, so you can go out and represent us, who we are.
Let's hit on that again. I want to break that down, because that to me is unbelievable. The fact that you'll keep the probie in-house and ship out another guy for a detail to go somewhere else because your probie is yours and you want to teach him your core values as he's most impressionable as that probie. And we want you to stay here and learn our way. We'll send another guy out to cover that detail, wherein I would say 90% of firehouses across the country, the low man on the totem pole gets shipped out for all the shitty jobs.
Even in the city. Absolutely.
That is different thinking.
It is different thinking.
Level. That is the varsity thinking.
Yes, and it is, and I came from a high varsity firehouse with those values. It's almost like when you have a newborn baby.
I love this.
But you have a newborn baby. Mothers don't often want to just pass the baby off. Oh, look at the cute baby.
Right.
You know? No, this is my baby.
Yep, that's right.
This is my probie. We're not passing him off to you so you can corrupt him, get him in trouble, get him in danger, possibly kill him, because we don't know how you're going to treat him. He's ours. For 1 year, he's ours. Then after that, he's himself. But for the 1 year, he's ours. But the second he becomes himself, you better perform to our standard. Because now you represent our company.
Dude, there's so much value in that right there. So much value.
And now we have the rotation program going on with us.
Yeah.
Great. They're taking guys from busy places, putting them in slower places. Don't agree with that. The only positive in that is that they get to see how lucky they are where they come from.
Right.
Flip the script, guys coming from a little bit quieter places to really busy places, learning the true culture of the job, the right thing to do. Most of them are staying. I always say good people gravitate to great places. Yeah. This is a great opportunity for the ones that are striving for that spot.
Yeah.
Finds it.
Right.
Performs, stays. Flip side, it gives the guys an out that say, you know what? My uncle put me here in this company. I don't want to work in a busy company. I learned the hard way. Now they go to a little quieter place, and that's great. You fit in where you're supposed to be. You gravitate to where you're supposed to be. It doesn't mean you're a bag of shit because you work in a slower place. It just means that you don't want to do the running. You don't want to go to the fires. That's fine. But again, different tribes, different companies, different people.
Yeah.
Not my people, my people.
And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong at all.
You're allowed to have your people. There's a reason why you have a friend group. There's a reason why you and I get along so well, and we do this regularly, and we get to hang out often, right? Because we enjoy each other's company, right? Like, you're allowed to pick your tribe. You want them to best represent who you are. Why wouldn't you surround yourself with the people you want to be with?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I love it, man. That's good. What else? Like, what else is hot with you lately? Anything got you fired up, or anything that you've seen lately that is like, hey, we got to look at this a little bit deeper, further? I always like picking your brain when we talk, and because I know I watch you and I watch your content. And a lot of times, lately, I've noticed your posts, your content that comes out, is somehow paralleling something you've seen recently, and you're kind of going at it a little bit differently. I've noticed. Am I off on that?
No, you're right. Something that's really bothering me is that the influx of all these conferences, which is great. I'm all for 1,000 micro conferences out there, but pull it off. Pull it off, because you're undervaluing the talent that's willing to come teach for you by last minute canceling them.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
Right.
Across the board, it's not fair.
I agree.
For the students that sign up, and just because you don't meet a quota of how many students you want, you cancel the event, that's out. That's not the brotherhood. That's not the fire service. If 3 guys are going to learn something, we teach the 3 guys. There's something to that. It's accountability. It's the details. If you have 3 guys that want to show up and you lose money on the back end, well, that's your fault for not promoting the class. That's your fault for making the price way overpriced than what we told you to price it out at.
Right.
We're not in to make money. Some people are doing these conferences to make money.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line truth. It's the brutal truth that no one wants to talk about. And I think that it's so unfair to the instructors from the national level to the local level that prepare the time for the PowerPoint, prepare the time away from their family doing that PowerPoint, getting off work, the excitement of doing it, which we're all excited to teach and do things you're excited to learn, but what a disjustice and disservice to the fire service by canceling these events on the people that did sign up. Just because you didn't make your money and hit your quota, well, fuck these 20 guys. They're out.
You know, so you and I talked about this, and I didn't know if we were going to go down this road, and I love this because it needs to be talked about.
It does.
And I think what's really interesting about this is that if the excitement of running a conference is great, you want to bring something different to your locale, to your zip code, right? And you line up people to come, and there's a burden on the instructors to come because all the things you just said. It's not a burden, it's part of the process.
Exactly.
Right, but once you get locked in 6 months ago on this date, you can't take any other dates now. You can't take any other conferences. So now you lock yourself out, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks before, sorry, we didn't get the numbers, we're going to cancel. Meanwhile, flights, you change your work schedule, you have to flip the script. You couldn't take another job, right, in that weekend. Yep. That's the instructor side. I never thought about the student side until we talked about this. And then it really started to make sense in the grand scheme of things, is that If you're looking to put 200 people in that room for that conference that weekend, and you get 50 that register, and it didn't hit the mark that you were expecting, right, for the person throwing the conference, you cancel the conference. There was an expectation of those 50 people, those 50 firefighters were starving for information, that they were taking time to come to this conference.
Yeah.
And now because you didn't hit your mark, you tell them, sorry, we can't give you what we promised.
And on the back end, that ultimately reflects the instructors coming in. Because now these firefighters are thinking, you know what?
Nobody else wanted to come see this guy.
Not even that though, but like, I canceled my vacation. I took a day off of work.
Right.
I had everything lined up not to coach that day because I really wanted to learn something. But now all of a sudden these instructors don't show up. They're going to blame the instructors, not the guys behind the scenes of what's actually happening.
Right.
The ones that are organizing all this.
Right.
The instructors the ones I work with, very, very, very rarely, if ever, will cancel an event because they know it's all about the student.
That's right.
It's always about the student. So many things in my life that I've missed because we book out 8, 12 months in advance sometimes. Right. Not knowing my daughter's recital is going to be that Saturday I have a class. Remember, we were in Texas. Mm-hmm. I booked Texas at how long?
Right.
Almost a year.
Right.
Schedule comes out, my daughter's dance recital. So I took a red eye to get back to the recital, but like, I very easily could have just not went to Texas. It would have been the better thing to do for my family. But again, I'm all in. Commitment. I made a commitment, I was there. On the back end, if you're doing these conferences, make the commitment and perform. I know I sound a little heated, but I am a little heated
You're allowed to be, though,
because this is happening far too often.
Well, you're also speaking to things that I think a lot of people, especially people that teach and travel, these are a lot of things that are issues that are talked about behind closed doors. And it should be said that if you're going to take on the commitment of hosting a conference, you have to be able to know that you can deliver upon it. And if you can't get numbers because you didn't work hard at doing it, you don't get to nonchalantly just cancel it. Like, it should not work that way. And you got to understand that. Like, you got to take personal responsibility for it and figure it out.
Yeah, oh yeah. Figure it out.
Figure it out.
Is there a grace period? Absolutely. If you get to a certain point, it's not getting the numbers maybe you expected. Let's talk, but let's talk 4 or 5 months out.
Yes.
Not weeks out.
Right.
Once you're into the week zone, my personal opinion, you're all in.
You're all in.
And if you're going to take a hit, you take a hit. But that's life. Should have worked a little bit harder to promote that conference.
I think that it parallels this conversation really well today that we're talking about here, right? It's accepting responsibility, your work ethic, right? It's easier to point the finger and blame that you couldn't get enough people, but what did you do? How hard did you work to fill the seats?
Yeah, and I think, and then the flip side of this too is where egos get involved.
Sure.
On the county levels, the state levels.
Sure.
And then the outside guys coming into certain areas, they butt heads.
Right.
So there's a little bit of, I think, friction there where maybe if we're going to do a conference in a certain area, people don't realize it's almost like the mob. You can't just pop up a conference somewhere.
Yeah, you got to have a conversation.
You got to have that conversation because it's really their training area.
That's right.
It sounds crazy, but
no, I agree.
And you have to say, listen, Jeremy, do you have any conferences going on within a 6-month period in this section of not only your state but like the Northeast? Oh, we have this going on in April. Shit, all right, we can't do May then in the Northeast, so maybe we'll do the fall. You cool with the fall? Yeah. So then we break it up, but you can't just do a pop-up conference like 2 months away from. You know what I mean?
I do. I love the mafia, especially here in Jersey, right? It's like...
It is the mafia.
100% is.
You have
and not only that, it's like, well, I'm going to bring a conference into the area. I know you're the local guys, so great, man. We'd love to give you like 10 seats, man. Come join us. I want you to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Right? Help me promote this. Like, what can we do to help you? Let's do this. Like, that's how it works.
I love the idea of giving a local guy an opportunity to teach.
Yes.
Like, if I'm coming into wherever, I'm going to Maine.
Right.
You know what? We have 2 guys. Let's make the 3rd guy a local guy that's well respected and trying to get out there. Give him that opportunity. Give him that opportunity to get up there and show everyone what he has to offer.
Right.
I think that's a great move. But you know how it is. What's the Bible verse? Not that I'm a big Bible guy, but it's.
You're asking me.
I don't know.
I can get Terry.
It's like you're not a prophet in your own region. I don't know. Pretty much, if you're never the expert of where you are. You go 15 minutes down the road, you're the expert. So it's kind of tough with that local guy sometimes. I get that.
100%. 100%. I love that. That's good.